Today we are going to have another look at the application process. There's not been much in the way of change from Microsoft, you'll be glad to hear, but we'll focus on what we're going to be doing in different phases of the application. And then we'll move on later in today's session to have a look at Sway and Forms, and both of those should feature in your MIE application. And if you haven't used either of them yet, don't worry, you don't have to do masses with them, but you should just show some evidence and awareness of what they are and what they could possibly do, even if it's just that you've trialed them and you intend to use them at a later date, or you've introduced them to a colleague. Whatever the context, make sure that they come into your application process. So the application itself, I think we're all pretty familiar with it, but just to recap for those people that haven't been at every session, you need to make sure that you have signed up on the Microsoft Education Centre, and I'll come back to that again in a minute. And then that you complete a couple of courses that will be the equivalent of 1,000 points. And then that will make you an MIE, a Microsoft Innovative Educator. And that is the level below what you're aiming for, which is MIEE, which is a Microsoft Innovative Educator Expert. After that, then you work your way through all of the evidence that you're going to gather to put together the strongest application you can possibly put together and submit that to the online application portal. And we'll have some dedicated sessions close to the time where we'll go through in huge detail what to write in each section, to coach you about the sort of things to include, the sort of things not to dwell on for too long, and it will help you put together the strongest application that you can. One thing that is changing, on the 1st of May, the Microsoft Education Centre will change over to Microsoft Learn. It's sometimes called Microsoft Learn Education Centre, but moving forwards, Microsoft are tending to call it Microsoft Learn. The Microsoft Learn Centre will replace the Microsoft Education Centre, and you can still opt to migrate your account manually, and that's absolutely fine. But on the 1st of May, if you haven't migrated your account, it will move it across regardless. Up until now, it's been impossible to redeem codes that are being given out from trainers such as Turn It On as a global training partner with Microsoft. But from the 1st of May, you will be able to redeem the codes like the ones we'll give out on this session, and you can redeem them in the Microsoft Learn. So it's up to you. You can either wait for it to happen automatically, and then Microsoft Education Centre closes down at the end of this month in a couple of days' time, and your account will get pushed over anyway, or you can go ahead and do it manually. Choice is yours. The code for today you can redeem in the Education Centre, and if you have already moved, Learn doesn't start accepting codes until the 1st of May, so you just have to hang on to the code that I give you today, which will add up to being your 1,000 points. So we'll give you a custom training code that will instantly credit you to 1,000 points, which will equal you becoming an MIE, and that is one of the base requisites of being an applicant for the MIEE program. The code we'll give you at the end of the session, and you can just pop over to Microsoft Education Centre and pop that in. So the aims of what we're trying to achieve with you over this series of sessions is to make your classroom more accessible. If you're not a classroom practitioner and you've got a different role in the school, never fear. A lot of the applications we're going to look at, particularly those in today's session, Sway and Forms, are universal in their application, and whichever way you want to go with them, they can be twisted, they can be bent, melded in all different ways to suit audiences. Also, if you are engaged with learning, it's about making that learning really sticky and something that pupils and students really love to come to. You're not going to use all of the things that we're going to discuss every single day or every lesson, but what you'll do is you'll scatter them throughout your teaching, and it will help to hook in those pupils and students and bring them into what you're doing, in addition to those traditional teaching methods. And we're not suggesting for 1 minute by becoming an MIEE that you are going to forget all of those traditional teaching methods. You're not, but what you'll do is you'll use the technology to enhance and enrich that and make it another avenue to the learning that you offer. But as you'll see today, hopefully from things like Forms and Sway, We are focusing very much on making your workload more manageable and not adding to it by you becoming an MIE. In fact, trying to reduce it by automating some of the mundane and regular tasks that you do and using technology to your advantage. The application itself, there is a self-nomination document, which will be the same structure as the nomination that you pop into the portal at the end. And you can go along and pick those up at absolutely any time. That's fine to do that. When you get the slide deck, we'll put it into the team, and that's over in the files section of the team, and you can click the link that I've got on screen now and get the document. But if you just go into a search engine in a web browser and search for MIE self-nomination or MIE application, as one of the things that you can get on the same portal where you put your final application in, you can get that document there as well. So all I've done is hyperlink to it in our set of slides. Phase one, as I've said in the past, and also Lanny said on the guest session, is that that's really just getting some background for you. Microsoft want to know where you are currently in your journey, what sort of things you're interested in. Are you particularly passionate about some aspect of technology or IT? But absolutely nothing that you write in the phase one section will be taken into consideration in awarding you your final MIE application. It's purely for background purposes. Phase two are a set of self-contained questions, and they are marked automatically by an algorithm and a program in the background. They are very much defined answers or certain keywords that they'll be looking for, and that makes up 70%, or sorry, you will need to get 70% in there, and that will make up the phase two questions. As I've said, we'll have a dedicated session all around the application, and we'll go through the phase two questions, and we'll also go through the phase three questions, which are the long answer questions, and we'll look in detail about how to answer those. What's the best way to pitch your evidence? What are the things to make sure that you showcase? What are the things not to waste your time on and just take them out? And that all has to be done by the 15th of July. And if you want to pop that in a week early for the phase two and also the phase one, they'll go through and check you've got everything you need, and they'll come back to you if there's anything that you need to look at again. So the phase one, as we already said, background about you, what you might be doing with things like social media networks, digital tools you might be using, be it websites or other non-Microsoft applications. And it's okay to say things that are non-Microsoft because they are realistic as well, and they know that you won't just use Microsoft products or software. Then in phase two, those are those scored questions, and you can see the scoring at the top of the phase two. And the screenshot that I've got there, we will look at a real example of that form. You need to emphasize the CPD you've already completed on Microsoft Learn, as it will be by that time. It's very much quantitative questions, and they'll be looking at how you are using Microsoft Education tools. It will ask you about the range of applications you're using in Office 365, but in the wider M365. So it might be, as we showed you last time, I've switched on some accessibility features in Windows 10 or 11 that were actually in the software, and that's really helped the particular people or students that I'm working with that have got a range of learning needs, because now if they were visually impaired, they can see what's on screen compared to a traditional Windows 10 setup. So do talk about absolutely everything in the round, even if you think it's subtle. When we go through it, if you think it's relevant, do include it. And that is then marked pretty much automatically. There won't be any human being that will take a look at that section. It will just be a look at the score at the end. Then phase three are the long answer questions, and phase three questions tend to give you around 500 to 2,000 characters per explanation or answer to illustrate how you've met the criteria that Microsoft are looking for. It will want you to really focus in on some of those Microsoft tools, such as Sway and Forms that we're looking at today, and then translate that to your professional practice, the pedagogical approaches you've used, how you've enhanced others around you, be it supporting colleagues or making things more accessible for parents of the pupils and students you work with. It could be involving governors. There's lots of different contexts there that you could use, but get them all in and make sure that you describe them thoroughly in those character limits that you have. And those will be at the end read by a group of Microsoft employees and scrutinized, and they will help to decide whether you become an MIE or not, and that you need to have certain evidence in there. And as we said, in that application session that we have, we will go through in detail the sorts of things to include, the do's and don'ts, and give you as many pointers as we possibly can. Timeline hasn't changed whatsoever, so we're running our MIE support the whole time. You've got the team in the background if you want to ask any questions. I'll always post extras in there. So recently I've put a post in about DigiGirls. Microsoft run a free of charge DigiGirls event, and it's about getting girls in particular into technology. So it's open to all age ranges. If you know that you've got girls that are interested in the STEM subjects and you think they'd benefit from it, it's free of charge. The link's in there to go and sign up in our team, so you can always go and pick that up. But we've also got our sessions running pretty regularly all the way up to the application period. So you can always come and talk to us and ask us, or if you don't want to in between, you can ask us on these sessions. The E2 event was virtual again this year due to COVID, and that's now completed, but all of the videos around E2 that took place, they're all available. So if you search E2 2022 online in a browser, it will come up and you can go and relive the content there if you think it's anything of interest to you or anything you want to bring into your application. Maybe you've seen something in E2 that inspired you. So before I move on, has anybody got any questions about the application process, anything they've done at the moment? If you are going to be evidencing your application, the best thing to do at the moment is just make some notes, or if you're starting to think, look, this is a really good screenshot, or actually I've done this with colleagues or pupils and I've got a picture, start to gather them somewhere. You might want to create a folder, you might want a Word document where you're going to drop in some notes or prompts with a few pictures. You might use OneNote and keep it there, but start to just gather it and collate it, particularly when you get to that phase 3 section. In the past, the previous cohorts have found that really useful to have all of that in one place and not have to start from scratch when they come to writing that application. So if you can, make sure that you're building that picture as you go along, and it will then create all of the evidence you need when you get to the other end. Any questions at all before we move into what we're looking at in today's session with the applications? Just go over and check the chat. Nothing in the chat currently. If there aren't any now, I'm always around at the end as well. So if you do want to stay and ask something privately, you're more than welcome to do so, and I'll do my best to answer those and clear them up for you. Okay, if there isn't anything, we will continue through. So as far as we are going to look at today, we've got 2 applications we're going to focus in on. They are both free and included as part of Office 365. And you can make the most of them, not only just in what you do in school at the moment, but also to help reduce, as we've said, the amount of time you're going to spend doing some of those more mundane tasks. There are also applications which end up being the sort of thing that you will show to admin teams or business managers that are from non-teaching roles in school, because they are universally translatable into those other functions you've got going on. So forms itself, we'll look at what a form is, how you build it, how you can use it for classroom quizzes, and then once you've collected all that data in, what you can do with it and how you can share it with others. And when we come to look at the sways, we'll look at what they are, a type of presentation, how we can collaborate in sways, but also how we can then get those out to our audience and make sure that they can see what we're intending them to get. So we'll start with forms. And one of the first questions that you'll ask yourself is, well, am I doing a form to collect data, or am I doing it for a quiz? And then you will build that form, and then you will somehow distribute it. There's lots of ways to do that, and then you'll start to get information back. We'll have a brief look at some of the pro features that are in there, and then how that you can get that data out the other end and start to make some sense of it. So at this point, I'm going to break away from the presentation and jump across over to Office 365. As I've said, if you've got Office 365, this is always sat there. It might not be in your applications launcher. It might have to be down the list that you go looking for it, but it will be there. So if I get my screen to sync up, it is now. This is the Office 365 landing page. most staff go straight into Outlook when they log into Office 365 online. If you are used to using the Outlook software and you don't stray into the web browser version very often, you just open up a web browser, and today I'm using the Edge browser from Microsoft, but you can use Google Chrome, Firefox, whichever one you like. Just don't use Internet Explorer. It's end of life. Microsoft don't support it any longer, and Sway and Forms will not function properly in Internet Explorer, so don't use it. Go to www.office.com. You can see it's up there in the URL at the top. It will ask you to sign in with your email account, that's your username, and your password that you've been given for Office 365, and you'll get to this. So you're either going to have Sway and Forms over here in the app launcher in the top left-hand corner where those little squares are. Or if you don't have them showing up there, you can go to the All Apps list and then scroll down, and they're there. If you want to add something in and pin it to the app launcher, you can always click the three dots on the side there and pin to launcher, and then just like I've got there, they will be on the front for you. And if you frequently use an application, it's easier than going up and down the All Apps list instead. If we jump over to Forms, this won't be a massively in-depth training session. We do run dedicated training sessions for Forms. If you want to come back to those, they're available to book onto on the events section of the Turn It On website. But when you come into Forms, depending on what you've done previously, you're either going to have absolutely zero in the way of thumbnails or lists here, and it will have a blank canvas for you to start from, or you will have some forms that you created previously, whether you intended to or not, they will always show up here. So by default, you see the ones that you've edited recently, but what you can do is you can pin them in as well. Or when people start to share forms with you, and that's part of being able to collaborate, that people will share you their forms. There's no point reinventing a form if you've got a colleague that's already made one. So you can send a share link over. They will appear in the shared with me list there. If you go back to recent, I tend to keep mine in a preview mode where I can see what's called the thumbnail, and it lets me see a little picture of what's going to be in there. But if you want to get rid of that and change that into a list, you can have them displayed in a list, and that functions up there in the top right hand corner. I'll put mine back to tiles just so I can see what I'm doing. When you want to make a new form, you've got two options. You're either going to make a new quiz, so you can click on it, and because I'm in an education version of Office 365, the quiz is the default. If you're in a non-education version of Office 365, make a form with a default. But if you want to get to make a new form, you click the little arrow on the side and new form is there. So new quiz or new form are your two options. When you go to make one, it will come up with a blank header. In fact, let's just go in and do one. Let's make a new form. It comes in, you've got an untitled, so I might call this demo. And then you can give it a description, and I might say this is test only. And then the way that you build your form is you've got this big add new button down here, and it will allow you to choose different types of questions, choice, text, rating, and so forth. And I'll show you some examples of those shortly. And as you play around with them, you'll get more familiar of which type to pick as you come in. But based on what you've called your form, or based on your description and your question, Forms will try to be smart and make suggestions again to reduce the amount of typing you have to do. So we might say choice question, and we're going to have that there. And then you can start to build it. Once you've got your questions in, you can build them down, but you could also do things such as add in illustrations. Now, you don't need to go anywhere else. So if you're using this for a classroom quiz, and I'll show you an example of a classroom quiz you might use with pupils, it keeps the pupils in one place. So I know when I've been teaching before, sometimes just to mix things up a bit, I've introduced forms to pupils if they're old enough. It tends to be Key Stage 2 or Upper Key Stage 2 where I'd introduce forms. And then everything's in one place. If they need to search for a picture, so it might be primary school, it will then do that from inside of Forms itself. So they don't need to open another tab. They don't need to go out the browser, although you can upload your own, and you then search. And what Bing will do is it will bring up options there. So if that was an example of a primary school I wanted, it will then insert the picture there, and it will sit at the top next to my demo, and it's locked itself in. At any point, I can take a look at what it is that it's going to be like for the person who's the recipient at the end by pressing preview. But I can additionally mix things up by choosing different themes. So you've got different colors, so you can apply those. Maybe you've got a particular school color and you want it to represent that. You can use some very basic formatted options. So it might be that I want to say, look, this is an activity and with someone there, it looks like they're snowboarding. Or you might want to get a bit more bespoke where you can choose your own image to go in the background and upload that. And you can also choose your own color scheme as well. You can put your own color scheme in there, and then you can use your custom one instead of one of the defaults. If we want to get back to where we arrived initially, all you do is click the Forms button at the top. So don't click back in the browser because sometimes that undoes the content that you've created. Clicking Forms will take you back to your home page. It's like having a home button. And there you go. There's the form that you made. You can manage your forms from here as well. So the 3 dots are always the key to everything in the Microsoft world. If you click the 3 dots, what you can do from here is you can duplicate it, you can move it because you can create folders, and you can also pin it. And then if you did pin it, it would appear as a pinned option there. So I can do add to pinned, and then over here in my pinned, there is my pinned forms that I've got available to me. You can organize forms into folders as well. So you might want to move it in some way. So you could go to move and you can move it in between teams, or you can move it into folders. Or if you want to, you can get rid of it. So you can click on here and you can say, I want to remove it from my list. You can also go and you can say, I want to see all my forms, because that's obviously the recent ones. If you want to say all my forms, it will take you to a slightly different view. And then in here, this is where you could delete there, or you might want to say, look, I've got a staff meeting form here, or I've got a science survey. What I want to do is move that into a group. Group is forms work for a collection. So if I say I'm going to have a new collection, so this might be classroom, I can type this afternoon, classroom quizzes, and I press create, and then in classroom quizzes, I've now got somewhere that I can include and drag my forms over to, so I could drag them in there and I could let them go and they'd end up bunching themselves together as a collection. So one of the things that was a criticism at the beginning is that you could end up with hundreds and hundreds of forms all stacked up here. And even if you changed it to list view rather than tile view, people requested to have some sort of foldering system. Well, that's what collections are. They're folders for you to organize. So you might organize it by subject, you might organize it by class. It's up to you. It's pretty much universal, and you can just organize things in that way. Before I go in and show you an example of a classroom quiz or an example of a form for collecting data, has anybody got any questions so far just about how to use it in the organization of forms? Anybody used it in any ways and they found it really beneficial, or anything they found that they've been struggling with that I can maybe help with today? Do feel free to pop that into the chat and I'll come back and check. At the moment there's nothing in there, so I'll just go over and have a look at the classroom quiz option. So in here, I've got an example of a survey that I was going to conduct in a science lesson. So having a look at a classic situation where we're going to look at different heights in the class. So I've already popped in a title and I've popped in a question. So I've got here, you've got to give me a number between 10 and 200, and you can set the range by choosing the boxes there. You can also say something whether it's long answer or short answer. So if you want to give somebody more characters to respond, long answer is what you need to toggle on. You can also say whether it's a required question, and that forces the person to answer with something before they can move on. If you know that it isn't an essential question, you can toggle required to off, so you've got some sort of control. As always, the 3 dots are holding more options. So here you can have a subtitle. Subtitle at the moment, I've ticked it to on. And then that allows me to give greater explanation. So we would like to establish your height. It just gives them a further bit of background or explanation as to what they need to put into there. So down here then is my second question I've already included. It will give you some hints. Branching will go on to look at if you haven't used this before. And it will make some suggestions as to what the options might be based on the question. So are you the tallest in the class? Yes or no. And then instead of having the two options, it's automatically taken me clicking the prompts. You can still go back if you want and change it. If you wanted to get rid of an option, you can delete it there. If you want to reorganize your options, you can swap them around by dragging by the options on the sides there. So I'm going to click got it. And then if you wanted to add another one, so it might be that we are going to have a ranking. And then in the ranking, we are going to ask them to rank themselves in a certain height. So it might be 10, 20 centimeters, if anything is that short, and then 20 to 30 and so forth. So you've got ranges, whether you want to talk about discrete or indiscrete data, and it might be order yourself, order your height, and you can keep going. If you want to change the way that a question comes up, you can move the questions up and down the list. If you want to delete it, you can delete it. If you want to duplicate it because you've spent some time organizing the way that it's structured, you can just press the copy button and you'll get a second copy of what's already there. So there's quite a bit of scope for creating your form. Once it's done and you're happy with it, you can preview it using the preview button at the top. And this is how it would look to somebody else coming in and receiving the form and have sent it to them. So if I'm working with pupils and I've got Teams set up, I'll put the link in Teams. If it's a homework, I could include the link for the form in the assignment. When we looked at Teams assignments, I'll be using Teams assignments for homework. It could be that you put it in an email. It could be you pop it on a website. It's pretty much universal as to how it works. And as you can see, Microsoft have taken care of some of the headaches. At the moment, this is the view of what it would be like if I was viewing on a computer. But if I was working on a mobile device, be it a phone or a tablet, it scales it and it reorganizes it and it makes it fit. So all of that's taken care of. We looked at accessibility tools last time. Well, there's Immersive Reader built in. So if you need to use Immersive Reader to read the form, you can do that. And that's where you could change your languages over. But there are other features in forms as well. So if we went back to preview, you can have other languages available. So I've got it in English and I've got it in other languages there. So you can toggle and then it would change the form into other languages. To get to all of the options you've got for your forms, they're over here in the three dots. So if you click the three dots and you want multilingual, you can add in additional languages to having that drop down here. So I might want Spanish. So I'm going to pop that in there. And then that's locked in there. And I might say, look, I'm going to take that language out. So I do want to remove that language and I've been able to edit it. I can also go in and I can edit in here so I can have it renamed and change that over as well. So there's quite a bit of customization and you can also set what your default language is. If I go back to the other options, you can print from your form, although you do lose the essence of it being live and there's a flow through it. You could also say, look, there's feedback here to Microsoft. If you want to make suggestions, and as I showed you earlier, the organizing it in collections and having those folders all came from people hammering Microsoft and saying that they needed something like that. So do use the feedback. It does go back to a development team and it's not going into some abyss. It is listened to. Then in here, you've got the share button. The share button's pretty straightforward. So you can choose whether absolutely anybody gets the link and respond, or you can say only people in your school or your organization or specific people, and you can put in their email addresses and specify who they are. You could have a shortened URL if you want, and if you tick the button there, it will make it shorter. Then you copy it and you can take it and do what you want with it, as we spoke about earlier. So there's a link option. There's also a QR code, so you can download that. And I try to promote independence as much as I can around my classroom. So I will encourage, if I've got the right devices, for pupils to go and scan those QR codes. Instantly opens up the web browser and takes them straight to the form I want to use. So lost learning time is out the window. They're straight there. They're not typing URLs into web browsers. It's another way of them getting in if they haven't got a link to click and they've got a device that's capable of doing so. If you want to embed it into a website or some other format, you can describe the number of pixels here that you want it to be in height, and you can change them. So it's 640 pixels by 480, but you can use that for going to websites, or you can email it directly if you want to send it to a single person. So the possibilities to collaborate and get people in are really strong. If you want to join author, You can invite people in your school, mainly staff usually, to come and co-author this form, and then sending them that link will allow them to come into the edit view. If you use the link at the top, people then only get the preview view, the end user view. If you want to take a copy of this and share it as a template, you can do that here so that people can duplicate it out so that they can get a copy of that as well. So there's lots of functions that makes using forms very much open. Now, if I jump back out and come out of the science quiz, in here we've got a demo quiz that I might use with pupils. If you see this little icon up here with the dots with a branch to the side, it means that branching is being used. So if I click in here and I'm using a quiz rather than a form, I can determine as a teacher what the correct answer is. So I might say, look, no, that's the correct answer. And then when it marks, it automatically tells the pupil or the student using this what the correct answer is. And I can also make some suggestions, such as if you got it wrong, click here and go to the revision exercise on bite size. So for me in the classroom, it would free me up, and I could be working maybe with an intervention group or an individual pupil that I've identified needs some support. And then the other pupils, which may be more able, are able to then click the link and follow what's already in the quiz. Yes, you'll have to spend some time developing the form. There isn't a library of forms as yet, unfortunately, although every teacher I speak to always asks that question. But once you've got them made, you can share them with colleagues and colleagues can share them with you, and you've got them for the year after. So I fully appreciate that the curriculum changes and it evolves over time, but hopefully what you're doing is that you are changing it subtly and it won't be something that's too onerous. So as well as pictures, as you'll see from this STEM example I've got here, you can break things up into sections. So I'd have to answer question 1 and I might say, look, I want to say it's greater than 90 degrees. So depending on what I answer, the branching then gives me a different question 2. So it asks me to reorder so I can change these things around. And then I might want to watch the video here on evaporation, which is linked from YouTube. The only place that people come unstuck with using videos in forms is if they're blocked in your filtering from your broadband. So it's worth checking that in advance. I've had a lot of teachers build their forms at home, and of course it's fine because you're using your home broadband, but you do need to check in school that they work in the same way. So once the pupil's done that, they'll submit the whole form and in they go. With the branching, if I go back to this question, I think the branching is in here. You can go into here and you can go to add branching and you can say, look, if you've said greater than 90 degrees, I don't want you to go to question 2, which is explaining an algorithm. I want you to skip question 2 altogether, and you'd have no awareness that it even existed. And I can say, I want you to jump to what is question 3 for me creating it, and you go straight on to states of matter and water and melting and heating and so forth. So you can determine people's journey through by using branching. So that's an example of a classroom quiz and being able to indicate correct answers in there. But you've also got in here the ability to use a form to collect information. And it might be, as I said earlier, it could be the admin team. It might be that you're surveying parents. It might be you're a member of the leadership team and you want to gauge the feeling in the staff. So you can use the standard form that we've got up here, not the quiz, the form, for all sorts of purposes. And branching is what's called a pro option. It's when you start to guide people through the journey. At the beginning, you'll probably just make a straight form and you'll let people go through it question after question in the way that you built it. But what you can do is use the range of questions available to you. And if I preview this, so here we've got a choice question, and it's whether you're a morning or an afternoon person. So I might say, look, I'm a morning person. And then I've used branching, so I wouldn't have seen the natural question 2 that was in the form as an editing view. I've gone straight to question 3, but I don't know that as the person completing the form because the form's clever enough to still number that as question 2. So then you could go through and you can type some text in, and that could be analysed by you when it comes back. So that's an example of long answer text and short answer text. You can have a rating question where you rate things by stars or happy smiley faces. You can include dates. So if you're asking parents what date would you prefer for a certain event, you could survey them using a form, and then you could then pick the most popular date. You can rank things like I did with the melting, so you can rank things that's with your favorite subject in preference order. You could also rate, and you could say, look, in biology, do you know what, I think I'm at mastery, but chemistry, I think I'm pretty much expected. In physics, do you know what, that is my Achilles heel, I need to sort that out, so I'm emerging. You could also rate things by promoter scores. So you could say, look, 9, I'm extremely likely to do something or quite likely to do something. But you can also use forms for uploading files. You can set the file type and the limit, but those can be uploaded and those will end up going into your OneDrive of the person that created and owned the form. So you can have those in there, and breaking things into sections makes forms smaller. And you can see down here, I've got a progress guide. It says, there is going to be a section 2. So after I go to next, section 2, future developments, isn't even finished, but this might be where people suggest what they'd like to see in future forms. I'm just going to come back out of that and I'm not going to submit it. But back on the editor owner side, once people start completing the questions from the link I've sent them, you can then go and you can look at responses. You can view it online. So in here, I can see, look, I've got one person that says they're a morning person and 5 people said they're the afternoon. It also gets shown as a pie chart, so you can then hover over that and get more information. You'll see all the latest responses, but you may go, well, that's lovely, and it gives me an overview, but I want to know what's going on by person. So you click view results, and then you can scroll through and see for each person, and it happens to be me that's completed it every time, what the individual has said, rather than having the mean of something or the average or the summary view. Which you get here. And then if you want to get all of that out, you can press open in Excel and it will export it out to a spreadsheet. And in the different columns, you'll have the questions along the top, and then down the left in the rows, you'll have the different people and their responses. And then you can do some crunching of data in Excel if you need to go into a bit more detail. So Forms itself is quite versatile. It suits any audience depending on what you want to do, and it isn't limited to just being classroom based. So Forms for collecting data, I have used them in with pupils, but more than likely I'd use quizzes. But Forms themselves you can use for any purpose across the school. When you want to get back to the form, you click the form option there and in you go. Any questions on Forms? Anybody been using Forms? Anyone got anything they're doing Forms they think it'd be really beneficial for other people to hear? Nothing at this moment. If there isn't, I'll duck over. I'm conscious of time, and we'll have a look at Sway. So Sway was the second thing we were going to look at this afternoon. Let's close down some of these forms here. Make some space. Sway itself, again, available from the app launcher. You get 2 views of Sway, which sometimes confuses people. So this is the initial landing page, where if you've been making sways recently, you'll see them in a recents list. But if you click all sways down in the bottom right hand corner, you'll end up in a view that looks like this. And this is the version that you'll more than likely work from. If you want to start a new blank sway, you click here, start from a document, or you can start from a topic. And our topic is, if you're going to say what the thing is that you're trying to create, Romans, I don't know, English history, then you'll get a suggestion about what's going to be the best template to use. And to save time, there's lots of different templates you can go and pick, or you can go from get inspired. Some of those will be by season or by topical things that are happening in the news or time of the year in the calendar, but you can pick one of those. And initially I would say, rather than building one from the ground up, which can be quite time consuming, I would go and pick a template and find one that's actually relevant to you. So you can scroll through, there's things for newsletters or CVs, and there's quite a lot in there. Have a look at them, open them up, get a feel for them, decide which one's best for you. But as you can see here, there's lots of different uses. People tend to use them a lot for replacing newsletters. I've seen some schools creating prospectuses, after school clubs go in here as well. There's lots, again, of lots of different audiences for this, and there's lots of different ways of building it. If we went into the residential trip example that we've got there, what you get here in the edit view is you get cards. Think of them a bit like Lego bricks, and they stack together. You'll always get header cards. So I've put in residential trip and dropped in a picture there. And then when you press plus, you start to build up the different cards, and they will make an entire sway. So you can see here, I've made a sway about a fictional residential trip, and I'm going to send this to parents to give them a flavour of what the year sixes are going to go on and the opportunity they've got. And it would have been much earlier in the year, because by now I'd need to have it booked and I'd need to start having money coming in. But I could use this as a way of previewing it, and maybe at that point COVID didn't allow us to have parents in school. So when you press play, a sway will work more like a website where content will fly in, pictures will appear. You can see I've embedded a video here of Woodland Trace. Well, I need to have the medical forms, they're going to be issued, but what to expect? Well, the buildings have been done up, so you can have comparison pictures of that was the old building and here's the new building, and you can slide them backwards and forwards. Sleeping arrangements, you can get stacks of pictures. So if you click on them, you can click through the stack to see what the facilities were like. And then going down at the bottom, it's not finished yet, but the activities are outdoors, but also there's a purpose-built indoor area, and some of the activities in there are, and then I would carry on and show examples of the activities. But even though you can see there's a scan and a pan on the picture, so the pictures are alive rather than being static. And at any point, if I want to go back and edit that, I click the edit button and it takes me back to the edit view. Now, with building presentations or newsletters in Sway, it's not like PowerPoint, although yes, it will be a presentation of forms, but a lot of decisions are made for you in Sway. And if you try to fight against it, it tends to cause you a lot of work. But when you're editing a box, you've got very similar word formatting options. So emphasize is bold, accent is italics. You can insert links. You can unpack boxes and you can get more detail, so you could look at the picture on its own, and you've got things like bullet points. You can change the focus points. If you really want to focus on the trunk of the tree, you could. And you've also got the ability to do things with the text individually, or you can then bring it back together and not have it expanded. Sway is something where we run, again, a dedicated course to spend a long time going through this. Design, we're at the moment in a storyline where you build your cards and they stack up together, but you can remix your design really easily. So if you went to design, one of the things you've got in here are styles. What you can do really quickly is remix how your newsletter works. So if you're doing this to refresh it for another year, you can decide whether you want vertical scroll, you can have horizontal scroll, so things can go across that way, or you can have it as individual slides, a bit more like a PowerPoint where you've got the button in the corner to go through, but I think I'll keep vertical. You can customize things like colors and fonts by clicking the customize button, but you can have themes that are applied to really mix up your presentation quite quickly. So it might be, look, it's outside, I think I'll change from that to that. That's more like I'd like it to be. So you can go through and you can have a look at how it remixes your form. If it doesn't suit you, you can see how it's changed the pan on those pictures. You can just press the undo button at the top and it will put it back to where you were before. So you can feel free to try all sorts of things. You can also press a remix button and it will remix the whole thing individually and automatically. So there's a lot of options to choose. But as with a lot of things in Sway, they're mostly predetermined unless you're going to go through the pain of customizing a lot of individual content. If I come out of the design and go back to storyline, up in the top corner, play is where I go to view my Sway when I'm building it. But you can also go to the three dots, and in here, it's where you can duplicate your Sway. So if you've got a newsletter template, you can remix it every week to make it slightly different, but have the same structure. You can save it as a template if it is a weekly newsletter or a monthly newsletter. You can print. You can also export as a PDF, but you lose the essence of what a Sway is. It is interactive and it's alive. But settings for Sway are a really important thing. So you can have language that you set. So I've decided, look, I need this to be accessible for French people. And I can have that also down in the bottom to show that I want text buttons to scroll around. You can have certain options in here. So you can have viewers can co-author or duplicate that Sway. If you want people just to view it and not tinker with it or share it with other people, you untick it. You can also decide whether people can print it out or just view it online, or whether people can export it or just view it online. And you can have information that shows in the footer. You can also have it to auto play. So if you toggle that to on, you can have it to automatically start playing after 3 seconds, and then it will transition through, or you can leave it to off and people can go through and make their own choices. Also up on the 3 dots in the corner, You can have an accessibility checker, and it will go through and it will make suggestions to say, well, you could change the way that you've set this font or the way that that flows and make it more accessible to different audiences, and it will automatically go through and suggest alternative texts or what to do with a picture. And you can either decide to accept those or ignore those. You don't have to do that. Then it's the share button, very similar to forms, except it's got 3 radial buttons. So you can say, look, I want people that are specific people named by email address. I can say people in my organization or school or anyone with this link. If it's going externally and parents are going to use this or something, it has to be anyone with this link. And then it's really important down here, you don't give everyone edit rights. It's most likely you're going to use view. You copy the link and then you pop it into Teams or your newsletter. And Sway is a lot more social, so it can link to Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. You can get your code to embed. You can also get a visual link, so it will give you a button to click. But at the same time, down the bottom here, if you know that you've got pictures of pupils, for instance, and you are using anyone with this link, you could say, look, I'm going to require a password for you to get in, even if you happen to intercept the link, and it would, under GDPR, protect that data or those images of pupils and make sure that other people who happen to pick it up can't just come in and use that link as they see fit. So that's another one. And if you always need to reset the share settings at any point, you can reset them there. So there's quite a bit of scope to use it for different purposes. And the sways themselves, there was an example of a residential. It could be that you've got a school prospectus, and the school prospectus will say, look, here we are. Here's my video for my school. These are the sort of things that we get up to in school, comparison of the old and new school buildings. And as you go along, you'll get more skilled at it. You'll try different things each time. But I would say, don't be scared. I would set up a demo sway almost to trash it, and at first go through and have a go at using it, and then gradually refine what you're doing. Think about the layouts, changing. You can change the size of fonts, how much spacing you've got between videos and pictures, whether you want the full picture or whether you want a bar of the picture. It's all customizable, but you can have some really nice newsletters or information text or prospectuses or however you want to use it available for various different audiences. It's only you that would see the edit button because you're the owner. Everyone else would just see it as a view. So that is a whistle-stop introduction to Sway, but Sway in Forms is definitely something that you would say, I want you to get introduced to, and make sure that you put something in as far as getting it into your MIE application. Anna, no problem. Welcome along. This is recorded. If you need to go back and check the recording, it's no problem at all. You have come in probably about third of the way through Sway, but we were only just starting. We did forms previous to that, so that's all okay. The link for the recording, once it's edited, will go into our team along with the slide deck, so don't worry, you can go back and pick everything up. Has anybody got any questions on Sway or anything they'd like to know on Sway before we duck back over to the presentation at all?
Hi, Martin, it's Ruth. Is this something that you could teach like year 5 and 6 to do? You know, as opposed to instead of a PowerPoint type presentation?
Yeah, I do use it because I'm sick to death as a teacher of PowerPoint. So yeah, I do introduce it to year 5 and 6, and they just pick it up and run with it.
Yeah, I can see them loving it actually. Sort of.
They do. They
yeah.
instantly go, oh, the light goes on. But also it saved me loads of time, because whereas they've previously been faffing with all the different options on a PowerPoint slide, because Sway makes a lot of the choices for them, we might have done the research or something. There might have been book-based research, and then to stop them just copying and pasting, they make the Sway, but they can get a pleasing output really quickly, so you can do it within a lesson.
I think they might be better than me doing it for the first time, to be honest.
I often find that, you just a lot of technology I show them, they pick it up.
Yeah, all right, I'll try that then. Thanks.
Yeah, give it a go. And what's the worst that can happen? Seriously, I've had some really impressive outputs from this in some things like that I've showcased in assemblies or key stage get-togethers. because they have really surprised me just how polished it can be at the end of it all.
Yeah, I can definitely see newsletters, school newsletters in this format, going out as part of the evidence. I can get the head to use it.
One of the things that you can also do is you can embed content into here as well. So in a form, you can have a video, you could put a slide deck from another presentation, and you could have a Microsoft form in there for questions as well. And then all of that can be available in one place. So you can sort of merge all different realities. So an example of that, if I quickly swap over and show you another version of that. With my other hat on, I'm responsible for data protection of the company, but we often use it for sharing training. So you could do something that looks a little bit like this. So when you start to get really happy with it, is an example for a school that we're working with. So you can put in the training video. So the training video is there. Then you've got an agenda, you've got your slides, which would load up. So the slide deck sat inside, so you can view your slide deck inside your Sway. And then you might have a form built inside, so you can start to put responses into your form. So you can sort of blend it all together. And that's the idea of Office 365, that it can be used in isolation. Absolutely, it can be. But what you can do at the same time is merge them all together. Okay. If there aren't any other questions, I will jump back over and bring everything together for today. But I'm hanging around at the end, so if there's anything you do want to know at all, please feel free to ask. So as with all of the previous slides, if there's a useful course on the Mac, which obviously will be there till the end of the month, or useful websites that Microsoft produce, I've put all the shortcuts in there for you. Everything I've used today, I've picked up from those places. There isn't anything that I've created especially. And for the custom learning I'm about to give you the codes for, some of the content is from those courses anyway. So there's one in there for Sway and one in there for Forms. So you've got links for all of that. As far as we're concerned, we're on session 4, as I said, of the MIE program now. We've covered quite a lot of ground already, but we've got a bit more to come. We are working really hard with a partner to try and get the Showcase School event organised. The school itself aren't able to do the 10th of May as we'd hoped, and there will be another date. But as yet, I'm waiting on the school that we're working with to find out the exact date. But as soon as we get any indication of that, we'll post it into the team and let you know. So 24th of May, we'll look at Minecraft Education Edition, and we'll just examine how that can be used across the curriculum and just what Minecraft Education is separately from Minecraft that your pupils and students might use at home. And then we'll try and have some sort of culmination of an expedition session where we have even more opportunity to get evidence, but also come together to share what we've done so far and have you have an opportunity to work together in some small groups. So that will be less talking from me and more for you to go away and have a go at some stuff during that session and then come back together and share what you've achieved. And then in July, before the applications, we will have an application workshop and we'll spend quite a bit of time going through all of the questions and how to structure them and so forth. So there's a lot of opportunity there to get quite a bit of support of ideas. As always, do follow Microsoft on social media. The education team are always posting. They're quite prolific. Mike Dolson is always having new content and ideas or taking our program and looking at features. We are posting on social a lot. So we've got LinkedIn and Twitter. You need to get hold of me, you can always email office@turniton and get hold of me there. And then I'll put an evaluation feedback form in the end in there, but all of the YouTube videos previously are in our team, but there's a playlist for that in YouTube. And then if you need anything else from Turn It On, you can make sure that you contact us for there. What I will do now is go and pick up the code that you need to redeem. So if you want to use the code in the Microsoft Education Center and you want to get your MIE accreditation, which is step 1, and one of the requirements to become an MIE, you need to redeem this code and it will save you any work of going and doing anything independently. So the code that I'm just putting in there, you can copy and paste that into the Microsoft Education Center. If you've not been to the Microsoft Education Center yet, I will pop the link in for the Microsoft Education Center so you can go across and get that. Microsoft Education Center for the next few days is here. it will become Microsoft Learn, and the link for Microsoft Learn I will pop in there next, so you can go and do that. That code, if you're watching after the event, is going to remain live, so you can always redeem that. If you want to move your account over, as I said at the beginning, Microsoft Education Center is being suspended and it's moving over to Learn, and you'll have no choice soon. So if you're already in Learn, that code will not work until the 1st of May. But from the 1st of May, you can redeem codes in Learn. I can't change that. That's been a decision by Microsoft, but it's something that will be rectified by the next time we meet. So really, at this point, it's over to you. Is there anything you'd like to ask? Is there anything you'd like to share? I'm more than happy to stay here for as long as necessary until everybody's got what they need. Silence. All right, I'll pop the evaluation form link.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I've not been muted all this time, so I apologise if I've been making noise. Can you just remind me where we put the code in?
Yeah, of course I can. Let me just.
I know it's on Microsoft Education at the moment, which is about to become Learn. But whereabouts actually on the screen is it?
Let me just pull up a slide and share it with you, and then you can see. So you should see a slide here.
My profile redeem. Yeah. Okay.
So sign in. It says sign in. That'll become your initials. Click where I've got it circled. Pop-up box, redeem code, and then redeem it there.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, thank you.
No problems. Any other questions from anyone at all? No? Okay, I will stop the recording at that point.